Life under Guptas and Vakatakas. The Guptas as well as the Vakatakas are important dynasties in the history of ancient India. In this article, you can read about the various facets of life such as the administration, economy, social and religious life, art and literature, among others, during the age of the Guptas and the Vakatakas. Various facets of life under the Guptas and the Vakatakas. The Guptas came to power around the last decade of the 3rd century CE, about 275 CE. The Gupta period in ancient India is referred to as the Golden Age because of the numerous achievements in the field of arts, literature, science and technology. It also brought about the political unification of the subcontinent. By the end of the 5th century, their power had declined. The Vakatakas ruled the Deccan for more than 2.5 centuries and were contemporaries of the Guptas. System of administration. According to inscriptions, the Gupta kings assumed titles like Paramabhadaraka, Maharajadiraja, Parameshwara, Paramadevata, the foremost worshipper of gods, and Paramabhagavata, foremost worshipper of Vasudeva Krishna. The Gupta Empire was decentralized in nature and contained many feudatories like local kings and smaller chiefs, who ruled over large parts of the empire, as opposed to the Mauryan era where the political authority was vested in the hands of the king. These lesser kings adopted titles like Raja and Maharaja. The kinship was hereditary, but there was no practice of primogeniture, i.e., only the eldest son occupying the throne. There was the practice of granting gifts to the Brahmanas who in return expressed gratitude by comparing the king to different gods like Vishnu, Indra and Dhanata. The king maintained a standing army, however, the numerical strength of the Gupta army is not known. The standing army was supplemented by the feudatories' forces in times of need. The commander-in-chief of the army was known as Mahabaladekrita. Horse chariots receded into the background and cavalry came to the forefront in this period. In the case of Vakatakas, Chhatras referred to irregular troops and Batas denoted regular troops who were responsible for maintaining law and order and also collected revenue. During the Gupta period, the empire was divided into provinces called Bhuktis whose heads were called Uparakas. Sometimes, crown princes were also made the viceroys of the provinces. The provinces were divided into districts called Vishayas, which were placed under the control of Vishyapati. In eastern India, the Vishayas were divided into Vidhas, which were further divided into villages. The village headman, Gramadhyaksha, Gramika, managed the village affairs with the assistance of village elders. The village headman became more important in Gupta times as no transaction could be effected without his consent. The judicial system was well developed under the Gupta kings when compared to earlier times. The law books were compiled in this period and it was for the first time that criminal and civil laws were clearly defined and delineated. Theft and adultery came under criminal law and disputes regarding property issues were under civil law. There were also elaborate laws about inheritance. However, like the previous periods, many laws continued to be based on differences in varnas. The highest judicial power was with the king who tried cases with the Brahmana priest's aid. Mahanadanyala acted as chief justice, Uparakas and Vishyapatis in their respective territorial jurisdiction dispensed the judicial functions. The guilds of artisans and merchants were governed by their own laws. Economy, Gupta and Vakataka age. This section briefly describes the situation of the economy under the Guptas and the Vakatakas. In the Gupta period, there was a rise in land taxes but a depreciation in trade and commerce taxes, shulka or tolls. The land grants to the Brahmanas led to the conversion of vast areas of virgin land into cultivable land. The king collected taxes varying from 1/4 to 1/6 of the produce. According to the Gupta inscriptions, 2 taxes appeared in this period, Uparikara, probably it was a tax on temporary tenants, and Udranga, probably water tax or some police tax. There is also mention of Vata Buddha tax, which presumably refers to cesses for maintenance of rites performed for wind and spirits, and Halirakara tax, probably plough tax. In central and western India, the villagers were subjected to forced labor called Vishti for serving the royal army and officials. Vakataka inscriptions mention klipta, purchase tax or sales tax, and upaklipta, additional minor tax. The Gupta and post-Gupta period witnessed a decline in the country's trade and commerce. Till 550 CE, India carried out its trade with the Eastern Roman Empire, exporting silk and spices. Around the 6th century, the people of the Eastern Roman Empire learnt the art of making silk from the Chinese. This adversely affected the export trade of India. The Mansur inscription mentions that a guild of silk weavers left their original home at Lata in western India, Gujarat, and migrated to Mansur, where they gave up their original occupation and took to other professions. The disturbance of the northwestern trade route by the Hunas was another factor responsible for the diminishing trade in the country. This directly affected the inflow of gold into the country, which is indicated by a general paucity of gold coins after the Guptas. Society under Guptas and Vakatakas. The large number of land grants to the Brahmanas suggest that the Brahmana supremacy continued and even increased during the Gupta period. The Brahmanas expressed their gratitude by comparing the king to different gods and as possessing attributes of gods. The Guptas, who were basically Vaishyas, came to be seen as Kshatriyas by the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas were exempted from the land taxes, and these land grants made them rich and prosperous. They claimed many privileges which are listed in the law book of Narada. The castes proliferated into numerous subcastes as a result of two factors. A large number of foreigners had been assimilated into Indian society, and each group of foreigners was assigned a subcaste. For example, various foreign ruling families of the pre-Gupta period, e.g., Scythian origin, were given semi-Kshatriya status. The Huns, who invaded India during the early 5th century, came to be recognized as one of the 36 clans of the Rajputs. With the expansion of Brahmanical culture in distant and different areas, a large number of tribal communities were assimilated into the Brahmanical social structure of the Varna system. During the Gupta times, the status of Shudras improved. They were now allowed to listen to the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the Puranas. They could now even worship a new god called Krishna. From the 7th century onwards, the Shudras were generally represented as agriculturists. In the earlier times, they always appeared as slaves, servants and agricultural laborers working for the three higher Varnas. The practice of untouchability intensified, especially for Chandalas. The Chinese traveler Fa Hien says in his memoirs that the Chandalas lived outside the villages and handled meat and flesh. Whenever they entered the town or marketplaces, they would strike a piece of wood to declare their arrival, so that the others might avoid touching them and getting polluted. Religion during Gupta and Vakataka age. Brahmanism reigned supreme during the Gupta period. It had two branches, Vaishnavism and Shaivism. Vishnu emerged as the god of devotion, and he came to be represented as the savior of the Varna system. A whole Purana called Vishnupurana was compiled in his honor, and a law book named Vishnusmriti was named after Vishnu. Sanskrit was firmly established as the language of royal inscriptions. The Gupta rulers patronized Bhagavatism, worship of Bhagavat or Vishnu and his incarnations. Later Vishnu came to be identified with Krishna Vasudeva, a legendary hero of the Vishnu tribe who gave the historic sermon of Bhagavad Gita in the Mahabharata. So Bhagavatism was identified with Vaishnavism. According to Bhagavad Gita, the most important text of Bhagavatism, whenever there occurred a social crisis, Vishnu would incarnate on earth and protect the people. The progress of Brahmanism led to the neglect of Buddhism and Jainism. Idol worship became a common feature, and the idols of different incarnations of Vishnu were housed in the temples constructed in the Gupta period. Agricultural festivals observed by different classes of people were given religious garb and color and turned into good sources of income for the priests. The Gupta kings were devout Hindus. They also were tolerant of other religious sects. Although Buddhists didn't receive any royal patronage, as it was during the glorious days of Ashoka and Kanishka, some stupas and viharas were built, and the Nalanda University developed as a great center of learning for Mahayana Buddhism during this time. Thank you.